Hey there, fellow philosophers. Welcome back to the Eclectic Layman. Today we're going to be tackling kind of a tricky topic. We're going to be looking at what it means to know something and if that's even possible. So one of the first things I like to do when I'm running into a question such as this is take a look at what the brainiacs over at Merriam-Webster have to say. So let's go ahead and we're going to pull up a page of definitions for you to look at here. So as you can see, there's quite a few interpretations of know. Funnily enough, we can't even seem to agree on what it means to know something. So we'll come back to these definitions later when we explore how different schools of thought interpret them. But for now, let me give you my definition. So to me, to know something means that you are certain of it without any amount of doubt. And that kind of leaves us in a tricky situation because it means that we can be wrong about things we know. So that leaves us with one of two options, We can either pick a new definition of know or kind of re-examine knowledge as a whole and come up with a new kind of way of looking at it. So what we're going to do, we're going to look at some great philosophers of the past and see what they had to say about this. So essentially, the topic we're discussing is called epistemology. That's the theory of knowledge and what it means and how to distinguish between quote-unquote justified belief and opinion. So let's take a look here and see what some of the old philosophers had to say. Now, this question has haunted thinkers for thousands of years. We had Plato saying that knowledge was justified true belief. Descartes tried to doubt everything except his own doubt. Hume told us that we can't even prove that the sun will rise tomorrow. Now, we're going to go back to our dictionary definitions of knowledge or to know, and we're going to look at what some different schools of thoughts have to say about it. So a rationalist, they're a little more logical, and logic tends to be more mathematical. So if we look at our definitions again, the definition they would most likely connect with most is to be aware of the truth or factuality of, / be convinced or certain of. And empiricists, they look to the senses, sight, hearing, taste, touch, things of that nature. So they would likely resonate with the definition to perceive directly or have direct cognition of. And the faithful, they lean on revelation. So they require nothing more than to feel that something is true or whatever. So the definition they would likely lean towards would be to be acquainted or familiar with. Now, skepticism is that annoying friend that is asking you, but how do you really know? So now let's take a look at what a skeptic would say to each of these schools of thought whenever they claim knowledge. A skeptic might say to a rationalist, well, your logic relies on assuming that your premises are true. How do you know that your premises are actually true? And I think that's a pretty good argument. A logical statement could be, if it rains, then cats and dogs fall out of the sky. It is raining, therefore cats and dogs are falling out of the sky. That's a logical statement, as far as I understand that. So pure logic can't really be the only tool you use when trying to find truth or knowledge. And to the empiricist, a skeptic might say that our senses are interpreted by our brains, right? So they can't truly be known as reliable because when they're interpreted, that means they're already being augmented from what quote-unquote true reality is. So, there might be something in the brain that cuts off our perception of everything so that we're missing stuff. And then the faithful are a different beast altogether. You know, you could have a very self-aware, faithful person that understands that, oh no, it is a belief. I don't know, right? But there's others that just kind of like toe the line. You know, they're like, I'm listening to the preacher. I'm going to take everything he says as truth. And so then they believe that they know what's going on. But it's a conundrum, right? Because to have faith in something means that there isn't certainty. So that clashes with my definition of to know something. Now, in these previous chapters, it may seem like I'm disagreeing with all of these schools of thought on how they obtain knowledge. It's more that I disagree with any one school of thought claiming that it is the source of knowledge. So when we remove ourselves from being tied to one camp, you can see all the different tools that we now have access to. You know, we have logic, observation, experience, language, science, maybe story from the faithful people. So any one of these tools might not give us the truth, but when we combine them all, it might get us close. It might get us close to like knowledge as a whole. So I'm trying to come up with some examples of things that we think we know, but they're really just, I guess I'd call them educated assumptions. The first thing that comes to my mind as a skeptic is that other people are conscious just like me. I can never experience the qualia of what it is like to be you, so I can't truly be certain that you aren't a projection of my mind, or you think in a completely foreign way to me that just happens to be an acceptable way for us to communicate. There's also, I feel like in the modern day, we have come extremely kind of blind followers of science. And if any of you have ever seen It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, there's a scene where, I don't know the characters very well, I don't watch it, but I've seen this scene where he pulls up a diagram of all the great scientists throughout history and how they were wrong. And I'll probably put a short clip up of here.
Because the smartest scientists in the entire world all agree that it's real.
Science is a liar sometimes.
Oh, boy.
This is Aristotle. He believed that the Earth was the center of the universe. Galileo, and he disproved that theory, making Aristotle and everybody else on Earth look like a...
But, I mean, that's what science is, you know? It's not... Science doesn't prove facts. It supports a hypothesis until it is, you know, proven false. And we have some hypotheses that have been long-standing that we can pretty well assume they are either physical truths of the universe or, you know, as far as we know, the best interpretation of how something works. Now, having said all of this, I don't believe a skeptic framework is truly the best way to operate in everyday life. I see it more as a tool to take a step back and be able to break yourself from a blind adherence to something, you know? So I think there's two definitions we can kind of come up with that we can use when we think about knowing something. I think there's the utilitarian definition of to know, and it's I have observed enough to act upon something. You know, like from a skeptic, let's go back to our example, right? From a skeptic point of view, I don't know if you're a conscious being the same way I am. But if I'm wrong about that, you know, and if I don't treat you as a conscious being, I will either be shunned or punched, you know, if you don't treat somebody with respect. So from a utilitarian's perspective, it is better that I treat you like a conscious being. And I do, you know, I'm not sitting here saying nobody watching this is conscious. And then there's the skeptic kind of definition of to know. I only know what I cannot doubt. Kind of a very Descartes-esque, you know, I think, therefore I am. That's like one of the only things you can be certain about. And if you want to take it further, you can doubt your own existence if you really go down the rabbit hole. But yeah, I think you should obviously have that utilitarian definition, because operating with other conscious people, we need to have some kind of baseline that we can operate off of to make things happen in the world. And then when you're having your philosophical thought process, maybe use that skeptic definition to peel back the layers and see what's really going on behind this assumption that you're looking at, right? Now, if you've made it this far in the video, maybe you've realized that we don't know as much as we think we do. Or maybe you're more confused than when you clicked on this video, but I hope that's not the case. What I would like from anybody that's gotten this far in the video is leave a comment on anything that you kind of doubt that might be a mainstream idea. You know, I'd like to see kind of the different types of things that people, you know, think that we don't actually know. And if you're not subscribed, please go ahead and subscribe. The next video we're going to be looking at axioms, which layman's terms, like foundational beliefs, right? So we're going to start from ground zero. We're going to take away all of our assumptions and start from just, do I exist? Essentially is going to be our first foundation. So if you're looking forward to that video, you know, go ahead and subscribe. And I'll leave you guys with that. Thank you very much.